What's going on, good people? Welcome to the Bitchuation Room. I am your host, Francesca Fiorentini. So happy to have you here with us. We've got a great show for you today, particularly bitchy, I think. I think it's going to be the bitchiest show of the year. A lot of things happening and feeling extra close to home as a former anti-war protester in New York, and just a lot going on. Never could I have imagined it would get this McCarthy-y. So yeah, buckle up. We're going to dig into everything that's going on campuses across the country with comedian Nato Green, who is back for the first time, I think, since our live show in January. So very excited to have him back on the show. As well as Mohammad Khatami, who works with No Tech for Apartheid, which is now No Tech for Genocide, about actually being fired from Google for speaking out against basically the contracting with the Israeli military that Google has done. And I'm very excited to talk to him about the movement there inside of tech, inside of Google specifically, but also beyond. It's growing just as fast as the student protest movements are growing. So buckle up. We're also going to end with, speaking of growing movements, Sesame Street. They are not going on strike, but if they did, what would their slogans be? I've been working on some. They're not good. It's just it's a device to get into talking about excited union campaigns we're excited about. So I'm so glad NATO is here for that. If you're here as well, make sure you're sharing, liking the stream, giving this podcast 5 stars wherever you listen to your podcast, writing a sweet little review, something nice. Just drop it in there. And remember that this is actually only 1/3 of the show. We have a bonus bish that if you want to up your pledge to this community, you become part of the Frantifa and join the Patreon, patreon.com/bitchuationroom. That bonus bitch is now on Wednesdays. Yes, because why? Because Fridays are another free show. Free show for everyone, including patrons, obviously. Last Friday, we had Representative Rokana on, and I talked to him about a lot of different things. His vote for condemning from the river to the sea and that slogan, it was good. I could have gone harder, but I also felt like, what's the point? This is not about me, like, sticking it to Rokana. Like, he knows. Um, you know, uh, even though his answers were at times enraging, I thought they were enlightening and interesting. I did just want to know, like, so how much money did you get for that vote, bro? Like, it was a little bit of what I wanted to say. Um, Also, though, on our last bonus bish, we talked about the valedictorian at USC who was barred from speaking. And then, we're all like, well, I wonder what USC is going to do. Are they going to reinstate her? Like, are they going to let her speak? No, they just canceled all the speeches, which is just a prime sucker move on USC's part, and par for the course when it comes to these elite universities that we're seeing crumble before the Israeli propaganda machine. So we will get into all of that. In fact, I am foregoing what I am bitching about because I know I will have so much to say, and I don't want to bore you all with just finding extra things to bitch about. Also, we're going to talk about Donald Trump and his trial. Haven't talked about that yet. But before I bring NATO in, gotta let y'all know that this show, no big deal, has one sponsor. Maybe two, one in, doesn't matter. This is the only sponsor that truly counts. That is Sunset Lake CBD. I'm saying it all. I don't care what the cost. Sunset Lake CBD, Vermont-based, vertically integrated farm that creates craft CBD products, tinctures and gummies. Excellent stuff. Things to help you sleep, things to help you vibe out. They literally have vibe gummies. And I rely on their sleep good night oil, which is CBD and CBN, every single night. It helps me, as I tell my kid, go night-night. Night-night for big night-night, as I call it, big night-night. It helps me go big night-night, and I hope it does the same for you. And also, they donate to incredible causes. They're just a great organization. So sunsetlakecbd.com, coupon code FRANTIFA at checkout for 20% off your order. I'm telling you, this stuff is good. It's high quality. Oh, lotion. I love their lotion. A little bit of CBD around your body, just a nice calming effect. Anyway, that is that. And let me bring in, for what he's bitching about, labor organizer, comedian, father, Mr. Nato Green. Nato, how are you?
Bad. Have you looked outside? Have you looked on the internet? It's not good out there.
I don't know of such things. Tell me, other
Well,
than what we might be getting into, what's gotten to
uh,
you?
oh, you want to, other than what we might be getting into? Well, other than that, I mean, we'll see. But as the Frantifa knows, Nato Green is a big old kike, big Jew over here, and um,
And only he can say that.
yeah, um, big Jew over here, and it's Passover. And Passover, my entire life, has been my favorite Jewish holiday, because it's like it's replete with like themes of liberation and justice and freedom for all people. And we say these things that, like, because we have known bondage, we will fight for the freedom of all people, and all who are hungry come and eat, and all that kind of stuff that we talk about the profound meaning of exodus from slavery and into freedom, and
Yeah.
then wandering the desert and getting tablets. It gets complicated after that, but the the freedom part.
Yeah, yeah.
So
That's all that matters.
and like, it's a hard Passover this year because, like, for
Hard
years, like,
Passover. That's
it's a
that's the
hard,
title of
yeah,
this
hard
of
pass
this
over.
episode.
Uh, it's I used to host these, like, big, like, 30 or 40 person seders in, like,
Oh, nice.
Communist Party headquarter buildings of, like, drifting 20 something leftists who didn't have family in the Bay, and, like, you know so, but
I'm
this,
sad I missed this
yeah, well,
before my
the
time, I guess.
yeah, and now everybody's, like, gradually got married and had kids, and we can't do it anymore. So the but the it's a hard Passover because, I look at the Seder, I look at Passover, and I think about, like, what Israel is doing right now, supposedly in our name and for our security, and am appalled and horrified, and have a tremendous amount of grief about that, and also shame with other Jews who are like, you know, I literally cannot comprehend how Zionists are celebrating Passover this year, like what they're
Yeah,
fucking telling themselves when they're like, oh, where it says all who are hungry come and eat, there's an asterisk, and offer not valid in Gaza and the West Bank. We didn't when we said all, we didn't mean exactly all. We didn't
right.
anticipate the potential cost exposure of all. Uh, we meant some people. So, um, and like when we talk about matzah as the bread of affliction, like, they didn't, I'm no rabbi, but we didn't mean that the affliction in question is having to endure the hardship of the government that you voted for sending bombs to, you know blow up hospitals and children and stuff. So,
Yeah,
like, it's just like, I just feel crazy, like watching, seeing, like Zionists and I know we're going to talk about it, but simultaneously, like, posting about Passover and about the meaning of Passover, while clearly not fundamentally not understanding the meaning of Passover. Like, I can't. It's so hard for me to process.
well, I
That's
mean,
that's
that's
what I'm
really
thinking about.
interesting because it sounds like the meaning of Passover, which obviously predates, we've talked about on the show, like with Naomi Klein, sort of the the lessons learned from the Holocaust, which ended up turning into sort of, we need our own ethno nationalism, in some ways, and we're sort of about re-traumatization. It sounds like maybe that Passover is actually, not about re-traumatization of like the former enslavement of the Jewish people, but about like going forth into the world. I mean, I don't know, but it sounds like it is much more about seeking and pursuing justice, you know, beyond because of the history, right?
Yeah, I mean, the like, I'm not, like, I'm a member of a synagogue. I go to services. I wouldn't say I'm like a devout Jew. Like, you know, I'm not as knowledgeable about some people about like all of the history of and the intricacies of the religion. But, you know, I was raised like that, like this is foundational to our identity. That
Mhm.
like, that, that that because that, and what is the meaning of celebrating Passover every year and telling the story every year about liberation and all of the metaphors that comes with it, and about the need to act for freedom, and even the need to, you know um uh and that like, we as Jews, we have a like unshakable moral obligation
Mhm.
to stand on the side of the oppressed. And
Mhm.
it's not about convenience or comfort or even success. It's about like the obligation to act in righteousness,
Yeah.
and to choose and to pick a side, uh, and that never goes away. That never
Yeah.
that when we talk about the chosen people, the covenant with God, that's the deal. That's the deal. And so it's like, I just feel like, if we're gonna if Jews are gonna become oppressors and murderers, then we're done as a like, I'm not saying that we should be killed or whatever, but I'm saying like, then we have exhausted our historic purpose and we should fade away, like you know like the fucking Assyrians, or the people of Atlantis, or like, some other like
Which you're
forgotten.
not which you're not saying, of course. NATO would never like willingly go along with like fading away. You're a stand-up comic. You're an egomaniac. You want to be at the center, but you want to also be pursuing justice. No, I think that's yeah. I mean, so obviously self-hating. I think we've established that
Yeah, well,
early on the show. But
I,
yeah,
I feel pride in my own Jewish heritage. I hate these other Jews, is what I'm saying.
they're not the Jews.
Yeah,
No, I think that's a good thing. That's a really good thing to bitch about in this moment, and especially as yes, Judaism is mangled, and so many crimes are being done in the name of the Jewish people, and
the,
also the people who are leading, these anti-genocide protests who are Jewish are ignored. Like
yeah.
they're not really Jews.
Like, the head of the ADL tweeted that we're fake, that we don't exist. I mean, and my state senator Scott Wiener has been like on this thing, like posting constantly, tweeting, posting about like the anti-Semitic protesters. Like, there was a protest at the Jewish Community Relations Council in San Francisco, um, and uh, uh, it, that was organized by Jews, and he like went on the internet and was like, "Look, another anti-Semitic," and I just feel like we exist, like
Mhm.
anti-Zionist Jews exist, and not only anti-Zionist Jews exist, but anti-Zionist Jews have always existed. Like,
Yeah.
there have been Jews who understood Jewish identity around the concept of the diaspora for as long or longer as there have been Jews who wanted a metaphorical Jewish homeland, and Jews who wanted a literal Jewish homeland that happened to be where someone else already lived.
Can I just ask you briefly, like, do you feel like you've seen synagogues and temples, like, step up? 'Cause or are they? Because I personally have not seen a lot of religious leaders step up, I know that there have been some, I believe, like, in JVP, Jewish Voice for Peace in, like, New York and such, but, like, I think that's also slightly stunning that there aren't more religious leaders of the Jewish faith speaking out, but I don't maybe I'm just not tuned into it. What's your sense?
Yeah, so I mean, from talking to other people, people that I know around the country, like, it's like, there's no there are individual rabbis or individual like religious Jews who have come forward.
Yeah,
There's no like, every congregation is wrestling with it,
yeah,
as a congregation, as a community, because like, there are people like in there, there are some people who are conflicted, and there are some people who are, um who are like inclined towards supporting Israel, and there, there's some people who are like ready to, like, maybe not, they're not ready to be um fully anti-Zionist, but they're ready to, like, be critical of the Israeli government and call for a
Right.
ceasefire and
Right.
whatever. And so, like,
Which is huge.
which is huge. And congregations and rabbis are like really wrestling with, like, I talked to my own rabbi recently about, like, you know, like, because in our congregation there are people who are in Israel who were affected by October 7th, and like the kind of, and then people who are like freaked out about their perception of rising anti-Semitism and need to have those feelings validated. So I think a lot of people are wrestling with it, and it's fucking messy, dude.
Yeah,
And
I bet.
I mean, just the like, because I have organizer brain that I can't turn off. It's like, for me, the question is always, how do you get people from point A to point B? Like, how do you, like I can't actually. It was like, I was talking to a Muslim friend of mine, and I
Mhm.
said I'd been staying away from my synagogue because I didn't want to be disappointed in my community. And
Mhm.
she said, "Don't you dare give up on your people. Get back in
Mm.
there." So
Yeah, we need you. Get it. Just like, yeah, gave you a little squirt of Gatorade and a massage, and you have to jump back in.
yeah,
I think that's very real, but that's hard. It's often harder, I think. Um, but yeah, and there's also people like, I mean, in the beginning of this, where it's like, yeah, give up on the Zionists. I mean, I blocked all of them, all the liberal Zionists who were mad at me. I blocked them all because I'm like, I can't. Like, I engaged a little bit, and then I was like, you know what, worthless. And the worse this genocide gets, and the more entrenched they become, it's like the more disheartening. And so, what am I gonna do? Pick them off slowly? I can't fucking take your hand to the Google search bar and type in, Gaza, like, for you. There's only so much I can do.
yeah. I mean, I hear that, and I've like needed to figure out how, like, what boundaries I'm going to set. I feel like I have to,
Yeah,
like I'm, you know of the people who can, like I've had people call me and text me and
yeah,
message me and like want to talk to me personally to process their feelings. And like a lot of people, what I'm running into is the people who, just because of my visibility and my, like, I will set boundaries about what I'm willing to put up with,
right.
or sort of how much time I'll put in, and for my own sanity. But like, there's just so many people who are still like, but what about a two-state solution? Like, I feel like there are a lot of people who are like, you know, who are appalled by who hate Netanyahu and are appalled by what the current Israeli government are doing, um, and like their narrative about what's happening in Israel stopped when Rabin was killed in 1995, and
Right.
like they haven't paid close attention for 25 years or 30 years, and so they're still like, but what about a two-state solution? I'm like, dude, no one's talking about that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Look at the
Like,
reality on the ground. I mean, how many people are you okay with? I mean, you'd basically be removing settlements. Do you know how many settlements have how they've expanded? I mean, I'm not necessarily against that, but it's just like they would be if that's what a two-state solution meant, is like uprooting a family from Brooklyn that just moved there.
right.
They'd be like, "Oh no, that's their homeland from way long ago." Anyway, we got to move on. I appreciate this, and happy Passover for whatever that's worth. And I appreciate you being on. Yes, we're gonna get into a lot of the student stuff right now. Let's go. This is the week where. You can't blame the youth, you can't fool the youth, as Bob Marley once said. That's right. And I'll never forget that. And I'm
Yeah.
having a little flashbacks right now,
Yeah.
because police.
Apparently, you can fool Ziggy Marley though, because he's a dumbass.
Yeah, isn't that sad? I feel
You
like,
know.
yeah. He he has a great children's album. All right, we'll leave that there. But police have been violently arresting and breaking up student encampments that are demanding divestment from their universities, divestment from the occupied territories in Palestine. Universities like Columbia, which is leading the charge here, but Barnard across the way, NYU, Yale, and a lot more encampments are now spreading to Harvard, MIT, Vanderbilt, Berkeley. Dozens of students have been suspended from the schools I just mentioned. And Students for Justice in Palestine and Colombia, for example, had been banned for months now. The White House just recently has come out condemning anti-Semitism on campus, as if that's what was the main overarching thing. And then, of course, a lot of Zionists in high places are calling these demonstrators basically worse than Charlottesville. So this is a massive, it's been a massive story, and now it's sort of come to a head now that Colombia has, I guess, once again become a focal point for anti-war demonstrators and free speech and the lack thereof. But just to give you a little slice of what people on the internet with some following and power are saying, you have David Frum saying no student loan forgiveness for students arrested for disrupting other students' educational activities, which is just like, cool. Didn't you try to sell us on the Iraq War, you dick? So that's kind of lightweight. Then you got Eve Fartlow, noted Zionist, saying Charlottesville is child's play in comparison to what's going on at Columbia. And not to be one-upped by, of course, the most disappointing senator, maybe even more disappointing than Kirsten Sinema, because she was kind of a grab bag. John Fetterman tweeting, I fully agree with the White House. These protests are anti-Semitic, unconscionable, and dangerous. Add some tiki torches, and it's Charlottesville for these Jewish students. To Columbia President Manoush Shafiq, do your job or resign so Columbia can find someone who will. Stand by on more from Ms. Shafiq. But that is a senator. These are like, high profile idiots calling this Charlottesville, NATO, that this is the equivalent of Charlottesville, students who are demanding that their universities divest. I want to say there have been some instances of what appeared to be targeted attacks or assaults on Jewish students who are, let's be more specific with our language, pro-Israel demonstrators. However, there's also indicators that those people who assaulted some of those pro-Israel demonstrators were actually outside agitators. There is reporting, I think we have it from, this is from Waleed Shahid, who's been on this show, who used to work with Justice Dems, just tweeting from the Shirian Collective, quote tweeting something that they had put out not too long ago saying, Operation Global Insight, join Shirian's collective first undercover operation and become an agent embedded in enemy lines at this weekend's protests. What we're looking for is individuals who can maintain cool, calm, and collected demeanor against triggering Jew hate and pressure. Volunteers willing to wear keffiyehs and walk into these demonstrations masked. And yeah, so this is, they're going to give you more money potentially if you are have an Arabic sounding name and a Middle Eastern appearance. So again, this is actually not new. If you followed any kind of pro-Zionist or pro-Israel, for lack of a better term, infiltration in universities that's been unfolding for the last, I think, 20 years now. But NATO, some of your thoughts about the fact that all of these students' uprisings are being painted as anti-Semitic.
I mean, what I've been thinking about recently, Francesca, is like, remember how after September 11th, there was like the surge of Islamophobia and like Islamophobic hate crimes and hate crimes against Sikhs, and like it like and how how offensive it was, and how people complained that like Muslims had to disavow terrorism in order to be taken seriously about anything, um, and how people were like, no, 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 not all Muslims are Al Qaeda. It
Mhm.
feels like what the Zionist lobby is pushing is like the opposite of like, like just to identify all Jews with the Israeli government. Like, it's like the rapid. It is as if they were like, no, no, we're all Al Qaeda. We're definitely all 1 billion Muslims are Al Qaeda. All Jews in the world are Mossad. That's
Yes.
there's and so like you know, in the when they do what we were talking about a minute ago of trying to make anti-Zionist Jews and Jewish peace protesters invisible and deny that we even exist or are Jews, um, and then make these proclamations about like uh, about that all Jews, that Israel is essential to the safety of all Jews, and all Jews feel this way, and this sort of turning Jews into a monolith in the narrative in terms of supporting Israel. Then it's like then you get rising anti-Semitism. Like, it's called blowback. It's what we talked about on October 8th, that violence begets more violence. That,
Yeah.
like Hamas, if you try to outshoot it, it would lead to further radicalization.
Yeah.
And here we are, like, and now you're getting further radicalization around these issues. And just to, like, also let us not forget that college is expensive. And so to some extent, like, some of the, some of the, like, alarmism about anti-Semitism on college campuses is, to me, giving a bit of, like, suburban Jews freaked out about being in cities. Like, okay, Hannah, like, you didn't have to leave the subdivision in Pasadena to go to school.
Right, right, right. Yeah, yeah. There's a man touching himself on the subway, and I'm pretty sure he's Hamas. Yeah, no,
Right.
that's.
Yeah,
I mean,
you could have gone to UC Riverside and been cool. Do you know what I mean? Like,
well, and I think I have so many thoughts because obviously I was a student radicalized after 9/11, specifically in the moment that you're describing and seeing the amount of Islamophobia and then the rush to war and then the way to paint. I mean, there was a ubiquitous what kids are feeling now. I want to say children because I feel like they are. What kids are feeling now is this ubiquitous monolithic line of you do not criticize Israel ever. And yet in their literal hands, they're seeing reporters from the ground in Gaza filming, yeah, medical workers who had been handcuffed and then summarily murdered en masse and buried in a mass grave in a hospital in Khan Yunis. Like, these are the kinds of images, and they're being told. When we were protesting, I was an NYU student in 2001, 2003. I lived through 9/11. I was there, whatever. And then was participating in the anti-war movement and the divestment movement, specifically when it came to Palestine, because I think, all the anti-war stuff was a gateway drug to be like, hey, what's going on over here in this other endless war occupation that we also promote. And I forgot what I was saying, but basically, like, never in my wildest dreams could I have imagined the kinds of repression that we are seeing. Look, I remember NYPD was on our asses when we were protesting around NYU, but like there's a little bit of campus security is on your side. Not really, but it felt like a semi safe zone. We did like die-ins and whatnot. We did teach-ins openly about the anti-war movement or about Iraq. Nobody tried to shut us down for being, anti-American, I guess it would have been. But here you have students, faculty, all arrested and roughed up. You have now NYU particularly has erected just barricades around any plazas to be like, you cannot do free speech. And it's just, if there's anything more radicalizing than a genocide happening that everyone tells you is not happening, it is the weight of the state coming at you, 18-year-old, 19-year-old, and enforcing speech and arresting you and suspending you from your own school that you pay $30,000 a year to go to, that you're like, hey, I would like this money not invested in fucking war. That is so radicalizing. Like, if you think, yes, it's true, the kids who are orphaned in Gaza are also being radicalized, but these students are being radicalized. So if you want to stop the radicalization, stop fucking repressing them. So anyway, I just like that. Then you get me. Do you know what I'm saying? Then you get a me. You guys want more me on your hands?
I mean, I don't think you want more you, because then
exactly I can barely handle more me.
It would crowd out the podcast, the left-wing comedy podcast space.
I know. But let's just listen to really briefly two things I want to get into. This is from, one of the students that was suspended is Ilhan Omar's daughter. And here she is with a Palestinian fellow student, and they are Columbia students speaking on MSNBC.
Do you feel it's because of the nature of these protests and what they're supporting? Do other student groups have this kind of target on their back, or do you feel that you are being targeted because of the fact that it is in solidarity with Palestinians and against what Israel is doing to Palestinians?
Oh, this is 100% targeted. Every single protest that we have, there's a group of counter-protesters that bring all of their items, their flags and things like that, and they're not seen as having unsanctioned protests or really receive the kind of disciplinary warnings that many of our fellow organizers receive just for being seen at these protests. And so there is definitely some hypocrisy here, especially you can kind of see it with the students that were sprayed us with the chemical weapons and the fact that there's no public information as to what happened to them, but rather the university is actively discussing what is happening to the students here and making it a whole public spectacle rather than when we haven't done anything to physically harm students, whereas those that sprayed those chemical weapons physically harmed students.
Yeah, I think it's a testament to the Palestinian exception to free speech. I came to Columbia because I thought it was a progressive space for people who care about social justice and human rights. And at every turn, I have been shown that that doesn't apply to Palestinians like myself. You know, my peers, my classmates have friends and family that are still trapped under the rubble in Gaza, and we are being criminalized on our own campus, quite literally being taken out in zip ties because our president thought that we were a threat.
So that was Miriam Alwan, the last voice there. And I just thought that was, you know, the Palestinian exception to free speech is just a perfect way to put it. And they're so inspiring. What's leadership doing, Nato? What's you know, I think there's no accident here that hundreds of students are arrested at Columbia the same week that their president goes in front of Congress and gives, again, the most elitist and like spineless, indefensible display. Like, just like if you were a Columbia student or an alum or administrator, this is embarrassing. You didn't learn from the Princeton president. You didn't learn, or Harvard president. Like, practice a little bit. And here you are. This is Miss Shafiq.
My question to you, are mobs shouting from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, or long live the infantada? Are those anti-Semitic comments?
When I hear those terms, I find them very upsetting. And I have heard...
That's a great answer to a question I didn't ask, so let me repeat the question. When mobs or people are shouting from the river to the sea, Palestine must be free, or long live the infantada, are those anti-Semitic statements? Yes or no? It's not how you feel, it's...
I hear them as such. Some people don't. We have sent a clear message.
So is that yes?
We have sent a clear message to our community.
I'm not asking about the message.
Yeah.
Is that fall under definition of anti-Semitic behavior? Yes or no? Why is it so tough?
Because it's a difficult issue, because
I realize
some
it's a
people hear
difficult
it as
issue,
anti-Semitic,
but here's
other
the
people
problem:
do not.
is when people can't answer a simple question and they have a definition, but then they can't. Well, I'm not really sure if that qualifies.
So
I'm asking a simple question. Maybe I should ask your task force: does that qualify as anti-Semitic behavior? Those statements, yes or no? Yes. Okay. Do you agree with your task force?
Yeah, we agree. The question is
yes.
what.
So the question.
What
So
you do
yes,
about
you
it.
do agree that that is anti-Semitic behavior, and there should be some consequences to that anti-Semitic behavior. We're in agreement. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. I yield my time.
This, like, I could talk forever about this, and I won't. But this is so much more significant than. This goes beyond Palestine, but it is amazing that the issue. This is a Michigan Republican, McClain. What is her name? Lisa McClain. And you know, this is at a time when universities are already on the ropes for being woke, for being expensive, for being elite, for being all the things, and then this is their fucking undoing. They can't stand up and say, no, the intifada, not infatada, but also frittatas are not inherently anti-Semitic, is not inherently anti-Semitic. That is not what it means. It doesn't mean death to Jews. End of story. And to just before we go on, I'm sorry, to underscore how ill-equipped these elitists are to deal with a clear issue of freedom of speech. Here is another representative asking her whether she wants Columbia University to be condemned by God. And she fucking engages this question earnestly.
Are you familiar with Genesis 12:3?
Probably not as well as you are, Congressman.
Well, it's pretty clear. It was the covenant that God made with Abraham. And that covenant was real clear. If you bless Israel, I will bless you. If you curse Israel, I will curse you. And then in the New Testament, it was confirmed that all nations would be blessed through you. So you do not know about that.
I have heard that. Now that you've explained it, yes, I have heard that
it's
before.
now familiar. Do you consider that a serious issue? I mean, do you want Columbia University to be cursed by God of the Bible?
Definitely not.
Okay.
I will say, I mean, I should say that congressman was wearing he had a lot of bling on. He had a pretty big watch. And I think I was offered an opportunity to be a brand ambassador for that watch in my Instagram DMs. So,
So you will literally, you'll grill who you need to grill.
yeah.
You don't want to
Especially
be cursed by God. That was the outreach. It was like, dear
Yeah.
NATO, do you want to be cursed by God?
I mean, who's God, and what does the cursing consist of?
I might be into it. So
Yeah.
I feel like that is the
don't
perfect.
don't yuck my yum.
Exactly. That is the perfect example of this, like, libs will never get it and they will never save us. Like, in just one clip. That dude is very serious about God cursing Columbia University because he's a clear Christian Zionist. He doesn't want anything to be, anyone to criticize the state of Israel because all the Jews need to go there before Jesus comes back and kills a third of them or 2/3 of them. And she's like entertaining this. Of course not, Representative. And he's like, good. Like, these are the people who are defending us? I think fucking not. This is so serious to me. It's just terrifying that these people are leading these institutions. Like, fucking anyone could have. This is the thing I said last time. Have they not been watching? Do you just, like, literal ivory tower? Does the ivory tower not get Fox News? Do you not know that the shit's changed out here? They call you a socialist if you recycle. You know what I'm saying? Like, motherfuckers are
Right.
getting called communists for wiping too much,
Look,
like.
And I thought the Ivy Leagues were big on improv classes.
Seriously.
Yeah. She's not even like, there's not even like any zip zap zop or.
No Pavlovian reaction. Oh boy. Well, because we're on the subject and because I don't want to keep him waiting, let's just bring him in and save some Trump stuff for later. Mohammad Khatami, software engineer and organizer with No Tech for Apartheid, who up until recently worked for Google. Mohammad, welcome to the Bitchuation Room.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
I'm so happy to have you. I said up until recently because a few days ago, in response to an action that you staged as part of this campaign, you were fired. I am sorry,
right.
but also good riddance, but also fuck. So explain.
Yeah.
Explain. Welcome. Explain what happened. What happened on April 16th?
Yeah, well, first off, my thoughts exactly. I went through the same mental sequence. So yeah, April 16th, after probably months of Google building a culture of internal silencing, harassment, doxing, and just hatred toward people speaking out against our military contract with the Zionist regime, we decided to stage an action, basically bringing the protest against that to the office. And I want to clarify, the reason why we took the protest to the office is purely because for the past 6 months of us experiencing this kind of vitriol at work. we've tried every way of engaging with executives and leadership, whether it's petitions, internal discussion forums, and every step of the way we were just silenced and told basically to shut up. So by April 16th, many of us decided that, it's either us or the contracts. We don't want to be complicit in genocide anymore. 9 of us ended up getting arrested and because we refused to comply with security's asks of us to evacuate the premises. But
Wait,
50 people now
I have a
got
quick
fired.
question.
So
Were the other 8 people who got arrested as handsome as you, Mohammed?
Yeah, definitely. I'm easily the least attractive one out of the Nimbus 9. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry. I take no responsibility for my other guests sexually
No.
harassing my other guests, but very relevant.
No offense taken.
I love this is just like turned into the View interview. Like,
Yeah.
were all of them as attractive as you, Mohammed, getting arrested?
So tell me about
Significantly more.
Tell me about your skincare routine when protesting genocide.
It goes hand in hand. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
so
mean, yeah.
and these were across 2 different cities, right? I remember in Sunnyvale at the offices of who now from Google, their CEO.
Yeah, Thomas Kurian, they call him TK. So some of them staged a sit-in his office and refused to leave. 4 of us in New York staged a sit-in on the 10th floor Commons, refused to leave. But I think the thing that's really important to remember is that like out of the 50 people that were fired, only 9 of us were actually involved in that sit-in. So we're talking about blatant illegal retaliation from a tech giant that's basically just lashing out. And trying to silence as much as possible in the wake of our protest.
Right.
It's just astounding. Yeah.
And this day of action was called No Tech for Genocide, but the campaign is No Tech for Apartheid. And it's been going on for years. I mean, this is one of those campaigns that, speaking of when you start the clock, had been speaking about occupation for many, many years now. So tell me about No Tech for Apartheid and maybe Project Nimbus in relation to that.
Totally. Yeah. So we've been at it for 3 years. I think, I'll start with Project Nimbus because I think it'll sort of illuminate why we started the campaign. So Project Nimbus is basically a $1.2 billion cloud computing contract with the Israeli government. That sounds sort of mystified, but essentially what it means is cloud computing is just the provision of computing services remotely over the internet. And the idea behind Project Nimbus is that we want to build a vast server farm or server center, but within the borders of occupied Palestine. And they want us to basically turn over security and management of this data center to the Israeli government, a government that's currently being investigated for the crime of genocide. So it's analogous to if a serial killer comes up to you and says like, hey, like build me a gun. I might go hunting with it. I might also go target practice with it. But like we all know he's going to kill people with it, right? So that's sort of
the data
premise behind it.
center for tracking Palestinians, or what is that data center for?
Yeah, so there's another thing that's important to understand is like data centers, any machine learning project that you set up can be set up in like a number of different ways, and you can use machine learning to do a vast amount of things. So this has been sort of Google's defense. They've been saying like, oh, like they can use these data centers to service any sort of project. But we know leading up to this point, we're talking about an apartheid entity that literally in the West Bank, you're talking about 2 groups of people living under entirely different systems of law, Palestinians under military law, Israeli settlers under civilian law, just full stop an apartheid state. And you're asking us to give you the plug and play tools to build whatever technology you want, train whatever models you want. And we know it's likely going to be tools to surveil Palestinians as they've been doing in the West Bank for decades now. We know it's going to be likely computer vision tools that they've been using to identify Palestinians for decades now. It's like, and recently, like 3 weeks ago, Time magazine basically had this breakout story where they found that that Google had been sending invoices to the defense ministry. So we know that point blank, they are dealing directly with the defense ministry. They're giving them free rein to use our technology, and we don't need to really like put two and two together to understand that they're clearly going to be using it to surveil, kill, murder, and destroy like Palestinians, basically.
So, and you're saying that the Israeli government's position is like, who's to say we could be using it for surveilling Palestinians, or we could be using it to build a better Gal Gadot?
Exactly.
It could go
No,
either
literally
way.
that. It is literally as silly as that. It's literally just like, you have no idea we haven't told you what we're going to be using it for. Okay,
Right.
but you're under investigation for genocide. No, but we didn't tell you. Oh, but you're universally infamous for being an apartheid state. You put people under different codes of law. Look up mixed cities. Like, you are universally renowned for being an apartheid state. No, but we could be just doing anything with it. You don't even know. So
Well,
that's
what I
literally
think
the
is
defense.
fun about this, is every time, before, I think there's different lines of propaganda, but when you criticize Israel, you're like, oh yeah, you don't like Israel? Throw away your iPhone. Because Israel does all the tech. And it's like, do they? Because it sounds like you're contracting with a bunch of American workers here.
Yeah. And it's
my
funny
question
too
is-
that I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
No, keep going.
I was just going to say really quickly, if you explained this to like 90% of the workers internally, if I just sat down and explained exactly what I'm explaining to you, 90% of the workers internally, they would 100% be like, this is unprecedented. Like, we've never done this for any foreign government. Why are we doing this right now? It's just that there's a loud group of people that will harass you, dox you, and attack you for speaking out. And that's one of the big reasons, that is one of the central reasons why we staged this action, is to protect the people that are speaking out against this, the dissenters that are speaking out against this. So
Can you talk about like the what it was like organizing your coworkers around this? Like, how people came around, like, were like, did you run into a lot of opposition? Did you see people, did you see people's views really evolve over time?
Yeah, there's that chant that we always hear at the protests, that the more they try to silence us, the louder we will be. And like, I think about that all the time, because literally at every turn that they've tried to like shut us up, we've gotten messages from workers that are saying like, oh my God, like, I didn't know this was happening. How can I get involved in supporting this campaign and like making sure that my tech isn't being used for genocide? That's really big. Like, every time they have a history of deception and retaliation. That's like one of the things that Google is known for. They portray, oh, we're such a nice company, and then they just retaliate and abuse their workers. So when that happens, we always get messages from people being like, oh my God, I saw your question. I saw it got deleted. I saw that you were completely silenced. Like, how can I also be involved in supporting you? And when we had the action, almost like the majority of people that came up to us were like, I really support what you're doing. I really appreciate that you're standing up to the company. We only had like a few people that were, the same people that had been stalking us and harassing us for years now, or for months now, basically following us around, but for broad support,
I mean, I think it's, you guys did. I mean, this is a massive risk. I mean, you're young. I think some of the other people who I've seen interviewed are young, and Google is a good job, right? I mean, and you are putting so much on the line to take this stance. And there are surely people who are also workers who are silent about it, but support you in spirit. But I've seen it posed, and I think to Nato's point, as really a labor issue, that this is about worker power. So, remind everyone about Google's labor union status. There isn't one, there is one. What does the organizing look like there?
Yeah, I mean, there is a labor union. It's not very strong, just because, frankly, the culture that Google has fostered is one where
they're like, we give you
can you
haircuts.
speak up? Yeah, we give you massages. We give you like food. Like, you don't want to join like a union. You don't want to risk. You don't want to risk it all. Like that kind of thing. So that's kind of how they deter people from union membership. And yeah, I mean, the company as a whole, it's like the golden handcuffs analogy. It's like, you should stay. Like, you don't want to speak out. And I think they're underestimating like how workers, deal with ethical issues. And I think they're also underestimating just like the conscience of smart people. You have the smartest people, like some of the smartest people in the world, like working there. And they're really underestimating how much we care about our work being used for good. Like, every engineer wants to think that their work is having a positive impact on the planet. So it's just bizarre to me that they really think that they can like silence us by telling us, oh, like, have some cake, literally, or like ride the scooter. Like what?
Right.
Like, yeah.
And there was nobody was like, hey guys, what if we program the machine learning tool to be like, IDF, what if you just stopped and left?
No, I mean, see, you know, it's crazy you say that because, like, totally, that's a genius idea. But it's like, since we're turning over security and management of all our, like, the data center that we would be building in occupied Palestine to them, it's like we have no jurisdiction over it. So,
Right.
you know, saboteur would have been a great way to stop a genocide. But it's like we're relinquishing jurisdiction over that localized data center in occupied Palestine. So.
I just want to just underscore how much, when people say this is like a, robot or AI genocide, it truly is. And some of the stories we're hearing, again, from the IDF saying that they're operating AI programs that target people once they reach their homes, killing 30, 40, 50, 100 people in order to get one suspected militant. That's not sitting well with the literal IDF. Then you have these reports of drones that are, and someone has to program these drones to have the sounds of children screaming or crying that lures people out and then targets them when they've been lured out. We're also at a time, Mohammad, where we're being told that TikTok is an agent of the Chinese government. And yet we don't see the ways that, that Google and other tech companies are throwing down with Israel's genocide. I mean, this would be
100%.
like if you were asked, hey, we're building a data center in, I apologize, but like in a Uyghur camp in China, in, Western China. And, say it's business, 1.2 billion. Never in a fucking million years. And shit, man, maybe Meta's already done it. I don't know. But like, that's so clearly not something that Google would touch, right? Like that's so clearly not something that they would want on their brand. And so there is really no difference here.
Yeah, it's a selective sort of outlook on these crises, and a selective outlook on like the value of life and like what companies are willing to put on the line, because the climate happens to be, hey, money is where Israel is and we'll support you no matter what. It's like, yeah, screw it. We'll go all in on this. And yeah, like the climate right now is so similar to how it was whenever No Tech for Apartheid first started, because it's like the same way, Israel had been responsible for ethnic cleansing and apartheid and genocide at the time. It's like all these reports of Lavender AI and like how Israel is using AI and computer vision to detect and murder Palestinians. That in the context of us providing this technology to them, it's like you need to have like one iota of like intelligence to be like, okay, I can connect the dots here. I know that if they're using technology to kill people and I'm selling them my technology, and I'm relinquishing all management and security over it, it's just crazy. It's crazy.
And it's not like it's a small company that like, oh, if they lose this contract, what will become of them,
It's minuscule in comparison to what they make, right? So it's just crazy.
So where do you see this going? What's been the reaction to your firing and others? What's your next move? I mean, are you guys lawyering up? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, right now, frankly, the way and like the violent nature of the retaliation that has affected like over 50 workers, I think a lot of us are sort of processing the aftermath. I certainly was prepared to go. For me, it's the contracts for me. Like I have no business wasting my talent on killing people. I'd much certainly, rather go somewhere else. So if they were willing to drop the contracts, I'd be happy to stay, but otherwise, no thanks. But I think for a lot of people, this was not the expectation. A lot of people literally just passed by and lost their entire livelihood as a result. So I think a lot of us trying to process that right now. But main thing is we're certainly not stopping organizing. We're certainly not going to stop until the contracts are dropped. And Google, we're coming for you regardless. So.
I want to report that recently on my phone, Facebook and Instagram Messenger have offered me a Meta AI function. And so it said that I could ask Meta AI anything. And so I asked Meta AI, how do we free Palestine? And got a 7-paragraph answer from Meta AI that, among other things, recommended that I join the PLO. So,
Fascinating. That's very fascinating. Oh man.
I feel like Netanyahu would be cool with that. Like, I feel like that's definitely a Zionist
Yeah.
answer. Join the PLO.
But hey, I mean, that means it might be anti-Semitic though, so you better watch out. So
yeah, indeed. Well, Mohammad, thank you so much for coming on and for being so open and with us about everything that's gone on. And thanks for your organizing. And we will follow up. And how can we support? Like, what can people do?
The best thing you guys can do is just share as much as possible, raise awareness about Project Nimbus, about Google's complicity in the genocide, and most importantly, center the genocide in Gaza. Don't forget like why we're doing this. All this organizing on university campuses and Google everywhere is for the stories of the martyrs in Gaza. So please don't stop sharing that, but also raise awareness about No Tech for Apartheid, raise awareness about Google and Amazon's complicity, and just make sure people know about it. That's the best thing we can do right now. Yeah.
I'm sorry, is there time for me to ask one very simple question?
Mm-hmm. Is it a joke question?
No, it's a real question. It's an organizer question.
Uh-huh.
Are you employees or contractors?
I was an employee. Yeah. I don't know about all. I'm fairly certain that all 50 were employees, actually full-time employees, but I don't want to say that for sure. But yeah, I was an employee, for example. Yeah.
Jesus. Well, I mean, like, everyone is replaceable, but they're not. Like, I mean, that's the whole thing. It's like they can't wait till they fucking, I don't know. We got some real Elysium vibes going on here when it's like training people to, I don't know. Now I'm going off, but you know what I'm saying.
No,
Just like they want people who don't speak up.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
So we will see.
100%.
But
that's why they're cracking down so hard on college campuses.
Yeah, exactly.
So they get engineers who don't ask questions.
The fight is one and the same, frankly. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mohammad. Take very good care. And everybody go and support No Tech for Apartheid and their work. Nato, I have to subject you to this story because I haven't talked about it at all. We've been letting it hang, which is Donald Trump in court.
Who?
Yeah, I know.
I'm not familiar.
No, just the guy who truly stole my working life. Like, I think anyway, like, my life would have been so different without Trump, Bush primarily, then Trump. But it is the 6th day of Trump's 564th court case. It's his first criminal trial. Trump is charged with falsifying 34 business records in an attempt to cover up a payment to a porn star who he slept with, Stormy Daniels, in the days before the 2016 election. The prosecution is trying to make this look like he was influencing an election illegally, right? Moving money around. This was illegal. The defense is going to make it look like this is what any creepy celebrity billionaire with a toadstool dick does. The jury was selected, which is very fun because all of them, 12 of them plus some alternates, I guess, 6 alternates, had to say that they could be impartial. So they were probably in deep comas during the Trump years or have some sort of Benjamin Button syndrome where they have baby brains and adult bodies. Either way, it's going on. And Trump's been falling asleep multiple times. There's a hashtag right now, Don Snorleone, which I don't always love a hashtag, but Don Snorleone is pretty fucking good. And here's Fox News saying what Trump is being subjected to is absolutely cruel and unusual.
But the guy needs exercise. He's usually golfing. And so you're going to put a man who's almost 80 sitting in a room like this on his butt for all that time. It's not healthy. You know how big of a health nut I am. He needs sunlight and he needs activity. He needs to be walking around. He needs action. It's really cruel and unusual punishment to make a man do that. And anytime he moves, they threaten to throw him in prison.
Oh no, he can't work out.
Yeah, we all know how committed Donald Trump is to physical health.
Yes. So just the idea that like how dare you make a man sit through his own criminal trial is just, we've heard they might as well just be like, but he's white, like I'm waiting for that. He's a man. The trial is going to last 6 weeks. if found guilty, he could face probation or 4 years in jail. It is an interesting. I just want to take you through some of what's been presented, because there's some interesting things that are coming to light. The jury basically has to decide. I mean, this is the thing. The jury has to decide if these 34 financial crimes are crimes. Like that's what it is. But the defense or the prosecution knows that's kind of boring. So they really want to sell the jury on like, this was an attempt to sway the election, right? This is what it was for. It was to dupe the American people and yada, yada, yada. So whatever you make of that. But the prosecution, Coangelo is the prosecutor, laid out a tale that touched on tabloid journalism, tawdry affairs, and covertly recorded phone calls. Jurors will be told about events inside fancy hotel rooms. Oh, God, I feel bad for them. Trump Tower and even the Oval Office and the stakes, the presidency. Yes, Stormy Daniels is going to be testifying. I do wonder if she's going to go into detail about the encounter. We will see. Michael Cohen, who was once Trump's fixer, is also going to testify. And the defense, this is Attorney Blanche, is basically trying to paint him as a criminal who can't be trusted, and say that Stormy Daniels was biased, blah, 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 blah. Blanche is also saying that there's nothing wrong with trying to influence an election. It's called democracy. So there's a lot. But here's my thing about Michael Cohen. But go ahead, Nato, please jump in.
Stormy Daniels is going to testify?
Yeah.
Do you Trump's whole appeal to his base is like this perverse representation of masculinity? Do you realize that she could single-handedly save democracy by saying under oath, Trump came fast? Just that.
Yes.
Yes. he would get hard, and then he would come immediately without even getting
it was like
inside.
My first time. Yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that he wasn't a virgin.
Yeah.
Stormy Daniels, and I'm afraid of a copyright strike, so I don't want to play this, but she was on The View recently. She's so fucking cool. Like, you actually listen to her and you're like, oh, she has literally nothing to lose. She's been called every name. She's faced every kind of harassment, bullying, and she's got this amazing sense of humor and really doesn't care. And has also been pretty upfront about how it might have been consensual, but it was definitely coercive. She just kind of arrived in a robe and it was like, okay, I guess this is what we're doing now. Which, I mean, who among us? You know what I'm saying, Nato? We all have that one. We all have that night we regret because we were like, ah.
I've never arrived in a robe.
I mean, that's such a corny move, but you also weren't born inside of a Robin Leash Lifestyles of Rich and Famous.
Yeah, and actually, as I think about it, I have a problem, which is if I were to attempt to arrive in a robe, the only robe that I own is a Jedi robe that I got at Disneyland. And that's not
that just doesn't hold up on the stand. Yeah.
If I showed up in a Jedi robe, no one would ever be have an orgasm again. If I was just there naked in a Jedi robe, dicks would melt, vaginas would dry out.
If we found out that Trump showed up in a Jedi robe, oh God, it'd be over for the franchise. So the other thing, the interesting thing is also that
talk about the rise of Skywalker. Heyo.
I mean, she is going to talk about how messed up and nar his junk. I mean, maybe. But anyway, one interesting piece that we found out, interesting piece of evidence, is that Keith Davidson, who is a lawyer who cut Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal, who is also a Playboy model, cut them checks basically and cut these catch and kill deals. Texted to National Enquirer's editor-in-chief, this was David Pecker, I think his name was, quote, "What have we done?" That was the night of the election. So the prosecution is basically forming this argument that they knew that this was influencing the election. They helped Donald Trump influence the election. Obviously, Michael Cohen, I was going to say, the reason Michael Cohen fucking served time in prison is in part because of his role in these financial crimes in order to pay off Stormy Daniels. But so that's the picture they're painting. Here's the thing. I've said this before. I'll say it again right now. If I ever had the misfortune of sleeping with Donald Trump, you would not have to pay me a dime to keep my mouth shut. I would tell nobody. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, we can all think of those nights where we're like, man, never telling anyone about that because that was not something to brag about. So I just think it's funny that they thought they had to get out ahead of a story when if someone's sleeping with Donald Trump, ain't no way they're bragging about that shit. Just like, but anyway.
I mean, certainly not like 2010's Donald Trump. Maybe 1985 Donald Trump.
At one point, he looked less like mold. And yeah, that might have been the time. I don't know. That's so gross, Stephen. This, ugh. Blah.
Look, there was a lot of coke around.
Yeah, meaning he definitely wouldn't have gotten hard.
Right.
Anyway, Nato, what do you think? Is he going to serve prison time? Are you excited about this? You're going to we're not. It's none of it's being televised. All we're going to get, and also this is crazy to think that you could be a juror, just a juror in Donald Trump's fucking trial. Like, here's my assessment: they're going to let him off because, just like cops, it's very difficult to convict a fucking former president. Oh my God, this has never happened before.
Yeah, I mean, and also the kind of people that they had to get who didn't already have a developed opinion about Donald Trump. Like, those people have to be so incredibly stupid.
They're like, you remember that guy Ken Bone from 2016 who was like, I'm an undecided voter. Trump's like, all Mexicans are rapists. He's like, I don't know.
Yeah, right. They're going to be so dumb. They're going to be so dumb and ignorant and like have no sense of what is at stake.
Just like, I don't know, like, what questions do you ask this person? You know, like, well, I like to put my shoes on before my socks. And you're like, hired.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, we shall see. But Nato, there's a final segment, God. Oh my God, I'm keeping you for so long, but it's good because Sesame Street writers have narrowly avoided a strike. And it's very exciting. The WGA East, who represents them, have a new contract with Sesame Workshop, expands their covered work regulations on the use of AI, paid parental leave, makes substantial improvements to new media residuals. And they're going to vote. I think they're voting in now whether to ratify this. So I want to know if they did go on strike or if the Sesame Street characters are the future of the union movement. What are their slogans? This is Solidarity Street. Nato, what's going on in the union world in your drives you're excited about?
Oh, I mean, look, like, as bad as things are across the country, like, the labor movement is as exciting as it's ever been.
Yeah.
In my 25 years, like, Sesame Street settling a contract, the ridiculousness, an MTV show just got a union contract for the first time.
That's right.
Which, like, is really, like, upending reality television.
It's basically Sesame Street for, like early 20s.
Yeah,
people, right?
exactly. The UAW had their successful strike against the big three automakers, and then were able to ride that momentum into a successful organizing election in a Volkswagen plant in Tennessee.
Yep.
It is such a huge deal that to see the auto workers start to both make inroads in foreign automakers in the United States, in the American South.
Why? Explain why that's so significant.
So, I mean, as with so many things in the United States, like, when you're like, wait, why is this fucked up? Usually the answer has to do with slavery. And so, that historically there was like like a major auto industry concentrated, in Detroit, but in the upper Midwest generally, that was heavily unionized, where, these auto jobs were a pathway to a middle class life. People's kids could, go to college on these auto worker salaries. And starting in the 70s, that changed, and it changed because of globalization and plant closures, as well as,
Right.
as union busting. And partly it was factories moving overseas, but also it was factories moving to the American South. And the American South is right to work states where union membership is voluntary, and that is a political strategy that was advocated by the right over many decades to weaken unions, and weaken unions' ability to collect dues. To collect union dues, so unions have fewer resources, because the right wing recognizes what liberal Democrats do not, which is a strong and organized labor movement is like the most powerful institutional defense against corporate greed and the right wing. And a lot of it had to do with also specifically building on, stoking racial resentment between white workers and against black workers in order to prevent building. And so you can see, like if you look at a map of right to work states and average wages, like the states that have right to work generally have lower wages.
Yeah.
And so there's been this growth of moving manufacturing from the sort of urban Midwest into the suburban and non-urban South, non-union South,
Mm-hmm.
to get away very consciously and explicitly to get away from unions. And corporate America and the Republican Party is scared shitless about it, because like union success in the South starts making red states into purple states, basically. Like,
Right.
straight up. Like, I mean, Wisconsin's another state that at once upon a time had heavy manufacturing, and there's a chart that I keep handy on my computer that, like, from 2012, that in 2012, if you looked at white non-college educated households in Wisconsin, union households voted 60-40 for Obama, and non-union households voted 60-40 for Romney. So like unionization flips, flips the, like, how white workers vote, in particular.
Right, because they're organizing alongside their fellow workers who are, I mean, you've always talked about this, like these are multiracial, workplaces. And I mean, like, just like when you learn about collectivism, if that's the way to say it, your worldview changes. It completely changes how you view your own work, how you view your own value, and how you view, I think, your coworkers.
Yeah, that like people's, politics fundamentally are social, and people's politics are based on what's happening around them and in their communities. And if someone is
Right.
organizing them around, being in common struggle against their boss to reduce economic inequality, then they're less likely to be receptive to someone trying to organize them around division. But even, like closer to home in my world, like I've been involved in negotiations with the city of San Francisco, and we reached a tentative agreement where, among other things, we established a $25 an hour minimum wage for San Francisco city workers.
That's
That's going to
great.
represent a 23% raise for the lowest paid, several thousand city workers, a lot of people coming out of welfare to work programs.
Nice.
So,
Congratulations. That's amazing.
yeah. And then we're going to come out of that to, like, I'm going to start working on negotiating the first union contract for Planned Parenthood workers in Northern California,
Oh boy.
across 11 counties. So, like,
Shit is rough at Planned Parenthood, from stories I've heard.
yeah, absolutely. And so, like, like Planned Parenthood, like the homie from Google, like there's just, like Sesame Street, there's what always happens and has happened in the labor movement is people, new groups of workers figure out new ways to organize that are appropriate to the conditions, their conditions, and what the labor movement looks like when it's built around, Ford factories in Detroit is going to be very different than what the labor movement looks like when it's built around, nonprofit social service workers, or when it's built around, that just because the workers don't look and their jobs don't look like what unions don't look like, it just means it's a matter of time before those workers figure out what organizing means to them.
I love that. Well, thank you. Now, do you have any stupid slogans?
For Sesame Street?
Yeah.
Do I have any stupid slogans for Sesame Street?
I'll start.
You start. Okay.
I'll start with some that are not great, but
Okay.
the first one that came into my head, actually this is pretty good, is Elmo, We Won't Go. So that's
Nice.
obviously got to have that. Cookie Monster would have We Demand a Fair Share of the Cookie.
Good.
I would say Rubber Scabby the Rat, You're the One.
Okay.
You guys know Scabby the Rat, obviously the massive rat that's erected outside of any workplace that does union busting.
I always thought the rat was corny, and then I was like on a strike where people were like, "Hey, can we get the rat?" And I was like, I don't know why they get so excited, but like people get really excited about having the giant inflatable rat.
You always want that rat. I mean, that rat, like it draws attention. I love that rat. It's creepy too. The count would be like 1, 2, 3 plant closures. And then my final. You have to know these guys, the aliens, and the fact that UAW organized Stellantis, which owns this company, but they would say Jeep, 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 Jeep. I'm sorry.
Whoa. Okay.
Wow. I love those guys.
Yeah. Those guys. When my kid was like a toddler, they were terrified of those guys.
They're pretty scary.
Uh,
They're like, yeah, what the fuck? Haven't they? Now kids are like that telephone. If you ever show them an actual telephone.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think obviously mine. I
killing
did
it.
the homework. I didn't explain the state of, unionization and worker militancy across this country, but I have a dumb pun.
I was busy thinking about that, so I didn't look at the email that you sent me 2 hours ago.
Fuck you. Nato, we love you. Thank you so much for being on. Where can people find you, follow your work, listen to your stand-up?
I have a couple albums out that are available wherever albums can be streamed or downloaded. You can also find me at Mr. Nato Green on Instagram. Hey, if there are any Frantifa in London, I will be doing the Bugle live at Leicester Square in London on Friday, June 7th.
Oh my God, that's so exciting.
Come find me there. Yeah.
I want to go. Wait a minute. Okay, I just searched your name in Instagram and I saw the oldest picture of you. I guess it's only since 2016, but boy, Trump's done a number on us.
Dude, I was like looking this morning. I was looking for a specific picture, and I was scrolling through my old pictures, and I was like, oh man, I have let myself go. Like, I saw some pictures of when I first came back from Cuba, and I was like all thin and tanned and muscular, and it's like,
dude, you look hot when you came back from Cuba.
I know, and now I'm like fucking old and decrepit.
Were you even working out, or is the food different?
No, I was working out. A, I was working out. B, I was like had walked 5 miles a day. Just
totally. Yeah.
And I don't know if you've heard, there's some scarcity there, and so like I wasn't eating as much. I wasn't
just eating when you needed to, not like snacking.
Yeah, I would sit down for a meal and it would be like un montón de arroz con gris. But then
But the Trader Joe's snacks were not beckoning you every time.
There was no snacking.
Yeah. Fuck. It's crushing me right now. All right. Well, thank you for explaining that. We love you. Come back soon. Take care. Everybody check Nato Green out. Oh my God. If you're in London, you are in luck. I want to go. Oh my God. Take me with you. Let's read some comments and fuck off into the evening. Drink Your OJ, thanks for becoming a member on YouTube. That's also how you get access to our bonus bishes that is for members only and for patrons only. They're all up on YouTube. Thank you so much. Harold Wasserman, a member, also says, I understand NATO's partially to blame for the situation in Ukraine. Hope he's asked about that. Indeed. Every time. Pondering Politics, thanks for your super chat. Great Ro Khanna interview. Have you heard back from peers about a second appearance? I've been on 3 times now. I was just on yesterday morning with Tommy Lahren. Oh boy. That was its own situation. It was fine. We talked about Ukraine, actually, interestingly. I feel bad for Republicans. They don't know where they stand. They're like, we don't want any more money for wars that aren't on the southern border. And she's got to clarify that. But yeah, I was on with Tommy, and I was on a few days ago about Palestine specifically. So that was good. It's always last minute because they value my time. Zero PE, thank you so much for chiming in. I would like to see regular people answer at these hearings, because they'd give better answers than these scared liberal elite presidents of universities. 1,000,000%. 1,000,000%. Because normal people have been subjected to this kind of questioning, right? Normal people have been bullied. They've been gaslit. They identify the kind of behavior. They know that this is a gotcha question, right? They smell that shit from a mile away. That's how you survive in life, is learning how to detect a fucking liar and sniff somebody out like this. And again, clearly they live in a cloud of their own privilege because they've never had to deal with anything. And nor do they even turn on fucking C-SPAN once in a while. Shit. Jerry McLean says, I predict more increases in tuition, so only the rich can afford the university. These middle-class kids protest too much. I don't know if that's being facetious, but I have an answer to that. I mean, I don't think they protest too much. I think they are putting into practice what they're learning in school, number one. And number two, I do think that the rise in tuition is actually, again, I think, unbeknownst to the administrators, part of the undoing of higher education, because it is turning people away and turning them off of getting a higher education, and actually opens up colleges and universities to attacks from the right. And it's just so sad, because colleges and universities have been under attack for years and years and years. And so when you see them actually have to answer a simple question around whether this is protected speech or not, and they can't, they fold like a fucking chair, it makes me think that they are absolutely unprepared or do not understand what is at stake, and more broadly, what the fascist right-wing movement in this country believes about their institutions, which is that they are overpriced, places where people go to learn about woke stuff, right? And only one of those things is true. They are overpriced. So again, that's what I mean about this being so much more than Palestine, but yet Palestine is the issue that is the undoing of their prestige and power. And I think that's very clear throughout a lot of different aspects of even our political life, that Palestine seems to be the undoing of a lot of prestige and power. Anyway, more thoughts on that when I write it down. Hef, thank you so much for your super chat. Great work, Fran. Super proud. P. Morgan is scared of you. Dude, this guy doesn't learn. I mean, he gives these long interviews to Matt Walsh, and I'm like, are you fucking serious? You're gonna let Matt Walsh talk for an hour, like, unquestioned? Jesus. Monica G, thank you for becoming a member. Appreciate you. Canceling Culture on Twitch, hey, says they make him sound like an older dog. Lol. Who are we talking about? Oh, Trump? Oh, he can't sit there? Yeah, he's going to pee on himself. That's what the diapers are for. Robert, thank you for your super chat. Things are going to get worse, so they're going to get better, but they're not going to stay the same. I think we are seeing, universities often are these hubs, and they know it, of the beginnings of the inklings of revolution, right? Like universities, unions. We're seeing it. Prene says, C is for contract. I love that. And Zero PE, you're so sweet. Thank you so much for your super chat. You're the best. And with that, let's thank all the patrons at $10 or more. You get this shout out. Let's see if I can add it to the stream. My God. The fart song. Here we go. It wouldn't be a show without the fart song, or without LSD, who became a patron, joining the Franny Stan, or becoming a Franny Stan. Thank you so much. Thank you to Looney Tunes over on Twitch for resubscribing, and Mini Mud 21, 13 months strong. Looney Tunes 4 months strong. Heg Jump resubscribed. as well as Frank Morningtree gave out 5 community subs. I appreciate you. This is back a few days ago, but Charm Chaos, if I didn't thank you. J-Tide, thank you for resubscribing. Kyle8315. Thank you to everyone who works on this show. Oh, shoot. You can tip the show, TBR-Live on Venmo, TBR Live on Cash App. And I believe that someone did just that, and I've slept on it, and I was like, I gotta remember to say your name. But Jonathan Cook, thank you so much for your tip. Appreciate you. And I think I have somebody else who TBR-Live on Venmo Venmo'd me Aaron Burney. Thank you so much, Aaron. Appreciate you. Appreciate Paige Omeg, Maximilian Inhofe, Andy Vasoyan. Remember, we're streaming Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Fridays, 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. Follow the show on Twitter at BituationPod, TikTok and Instagram at BituationRoom. And remember to fight the power, to fuck the patriarchy, to free Palestine, and don't just bitch about it. Be about it. See you in the streets. Bye-bye.